What would you do if your job required you to ignore a voice calling for help, knowing that answering it might get someone else killed later? Not immediately, not cleanly, but in a way that would follow you into every quiet place. There are rules for wilderness areas that don't make sense to visitors. This is why, if you're listening to this alone, you're already closer to the choice than you think. I work in places where rules exist not to prevent accidents, but to contain something that preys on human behavior. My name is Andrew Calder. I am a Supervisory Park Ranger assigned to Big Bend National Park, Texas. I've been here 17 years, most of them spent in the backcountry and the river corridor, where the border cuts the land without caring about terrain, weather, or reason. This jurisdiction stretches farther than people realize. Desert, canyon, mountain, water that looks shallow until it isn't. Silence that carries farther than radio. People think park rangers stop fires, rescue hikers, and write tickets. We do those things. But we also keep lists that aren't filed. We repeat rules that don't appear on signage. And we learn, through loss, which voices to answer and which to leave echoing in the stone. Big Bend is larger than some states. When you stand in the Chisos Basin and look out, the land drops away in every direction. There are no cities nearby. No cell service. At night, the dark is complete. You can hear your own pulse if you stop moving. The border runs along the Rio Grande, and with it comes Border Patrol, joint operations, missing persons from 2 countries, and records that disappear into interagency review. That's the official language. The unofficial language is simpler. Don't stay out past dusk alone. Don't follow voices off trail. Don't write names unless you're told to. Those rules existed before I arrived. They existed because of what happened to Luis Herrera, 2013, Morisco Canyon, Lower River Corridor. He was a seasonal ranger, 24, good swimmer. He broke Rule 3 because he thought he heard a child crying from the south bank after sunset. We recovered his pack 2 days later. No body, no blood. Border Patrol locked the incident under suspected cross-border involvement. That was the phrase. We all knew better. By the time this starts, I had already signed off on 6 recoveries. I don't say bodies. Some of them weren't bodies anymore in ways that mattered. After the 6th, Border Patrol stopped sharing their logs with us. Not officially. Just the emails stopped coming back. Radio calls went unanswered. Their supervisors stopped returning mine. That's when the rules stopped being suggestions. The first thing you learn in Big Bend is scale. Distance lies. A ridge that looks an hour away can take all day. Heat strips judgment. Compassion becomes dangerous because it demands speed, and speed gets you lost. That's why our rules are practical, countable, passed down in low voices during night shifts. There are 5 that matter. Rule 1. If you hear movement where there should be none, mark the location and leave. Do not investigate. Rule 2. Never respond to a call for help after sunset unless you can see the person calling. Rule 3. Do not cross the river at night. Ever. Rule 4. Do not write a name in the intake log unless the person is physically present. Rule 5. If someone goes missing after breaking one of these rules, you do not go looking for them alone. Rule 4 is the one people misunderstand. It sounds bureaucratic. It isn't. It's incomplete on purpose. We were told it was about paperwork errors, liability. That was the explanation given to new hires. It was wrong. I learned that the hard way in my 5th year. But before that, you need to understand how the land behaves when something else is using it. The desert doesn't announce changes. It removes them. Tracks vanish. Sounds flatten. Distances stretch. When something takes a person out here, it doesn't leave signs the way animals do. It leaves absence, a space where behavior used to be. The first recovery I supervised was Emily Rowe, 2011, Upper Burro Mesa, off-trail but within line of sight of a marked path. She was an experienced hiker, broke Rule 1, thought she saw someone standing under a juniper where no one should have been. We found her boots neatly placed, laces tucked in, no body, no struggle. The boots were warm. We wrote probable exposure and closed the case. By the third recovery, I stopped believing the reports we filed. By the 6th, I stopped sleeping through the night. It always started the same way. A call that didn't quite fit. A movement where the land should have been still. A choice between procedure and decency. The thing we contain here does not chase. It does not hunt the way predators do. It waits for you to behave like a human, to answer, to help, to record, to remember. It erases by proximity, not physically at first. It takes your place in systems, in logs, in expectations. Border Patrol noticed it before we did. They just didn't have language for it. Their missing weren't found on either side. Radios keyed up with nothing on the other end. Patrol routes came back shorter than they should have been, as if distance itself had been edited. They started locking records because there was nothing to file. The summer of 2016 was the first time it used me. I was already a senior ranger by then, acting supervisor for the South District. My wife, Laura, knew the rules as well as I did. She volunteered with search and rescue. She knew not to ask questions when I came home quiet. On July 14th, we got a call just before dusk. Border Patrol reported a possible migrant group stranded near the river bend at Santa Elena. Heat index over 110. One radio pinged, then went silent. Procedure said wait until morning. Compassion said move now. I broke Rule 2. We staged at the overlook. No movement, no voices, just the river moving slow and black. Then I heard my name, once, from downstream. It didn't sound wrong. That's important. It didn't echo. It didn't rush. It was placed exactly where a person would stand if they wanted to be heard. I did not go alone. That mattered. It always matters, until it doesn't. We found a Border Patrol truck idling with the door open. No agent. No footprints leading away. Just the engine running and the radio keyed, hissing. My partner, Evan Ruiz, reached for the log clipboard out of habit. I stopped him. That hesitation saved him. We marked the location and pulled back. Reported equipment abandonment. Border Patrol sealed the site before dawn. The agent's name never appeared in our system. That's when I learned Rule 4 wasn't about paperwork. You don't write a name because the act of recording completes something. It gives permission. The thing out here cannot cross certain boundaries on its own. It can't move through elevation changes without help. It can't follow you into the basin unless you lead it. and it cannot act on a person unless their name is fixed somewhere official. Spoken, written, acknowledged. That's its limitation. It needs witnesses. It needs systems. It needs us. We learned that too late for Maya Chen, 2018, Pine Canyon, seasonal intern. She followed procedure perfectly, logged a missing hiker's name before verifying presence, did everything right according to the manual. By morning, both names were gone from the roster. The file corrupted itself. Her bunk was empty. Bed made. We found her radio under the desk, battery full. That was the first time following a rule caused the harm. We adjusted after that. Quietly. Verbally. No memos. By the time Border Patrol locked their records after the 6th recovery, we were already exhausted. Enforcement fatigue set in. People cut corners. New hires wanted explanations we couldn't give. Visitors wanted rescues we couldn't perform. And the land kept waiting. The night I'm building toward hadn't happened yet. But the pattern was already complete. Compassion had caused violations. Duty had forced us into proximity. And the thing had learned our schedules. It knew when reports were filed. It knew when names were written. It knew when someone would choose to believe a voice belonged to a person they loved. I didn't know yet that it could use that. I only knew that every time we removed a sign, another absence appeared, and that the rules weren't stopping it. They were delaying it. After Maya vanished, we stopped pretending the manual applied equally everywhere. Officially, nothing changed. The public-facing rules stayed the same. Heat warnings, trail closures, river advisories. Unofficially, we started training people the way you train someone to survive a job you can't fully describe. We did it at night, usually, after the visitors cleared out and the radios went quiet. We'd sit in the maintenance bay or out by the fire ring behind Panther Junction and talk in fragments. If you hear movement uphill where there's no trail, you mark it. If someone asks you to write their name down before you see them, you don't. If Border Patrol asks why we didn't respond, you say we couldn't confirm location. Nobody argued. Everyone had seen enough. The land cooperated in its own way. Tracks still vanished. Radios still distorted. But the outright disappearances slowed. For a while, the rules worked the way they were supposed to. Not as protection, as delay. That's the lie we tell ourselves. That delay is enough. In early 2019, we got a new hire assigned to my district. Aaron Blake, 32, former EMT, transferred from Guadalupe Mountains. He was competent, calm. He listened. Those are the ones that worry me most, because they think listening is always good. I took him out myself for orientation. 2 days in the backcountry. Showed him the river corridor, the canyon shadows, the places where sound behaves wrong. I gave him the verbal rules, counted them off on my fingers. He asked smart questions, not the dangerous ones. He didn't ask what it was. He asked what it did. Does it ever get closer? He asked. Yes, I said. When we get tired. That was the truth. The first violation that year wasn't his. It was mine. In May, we had a call from a family campground near Cottonwood. A child hadn't returned from the restroom. 8 years old. Lena Morales. Last seen at dusk. Rule 2 should have applied. No response after sunset without visual confirmation. Children change things. That's not a moral statement. It's a procedural one. Every rule we have was written by someone who had already lost something. None of them account for the sound a parent makes when they realize their kid isn't where they should be. I authorized the search. We did everything by the book at first. Grid. Lights. Radios tight. No names written until contact. The land stayed quiet. Too quiet. No insects. No wind. Just our boots and the parents' voices breaking against the dark. An hour in, I heard crying. Not calling. Crying. It was close. Downslope, past the tree-line. Exactly where a frightened child would sit if they'd wandered off and gotten stuck. I froze. Aaron looked at me. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. This was the moment every ranger eventually faces. The one where experience and humanity split. Stay on line of sight, I said. Mark it. The crying moved. That's how it gets you. Not by running. By adjusting just enough to keep you engaged. The sound drifted downhill, then stopped, then resumed farther out, as if the land itself had stretched. The parents broke formation. I grabbed the father, harder than I meant to. He screamed my name like it was an accusation. We pulled back. I made the call. Wait until morning. Lena Morales was found at sunrise, sitting against a rock less than 50 yards from the trail. Dehydrated. Alive. No injuries. She said someone had told her to wait. A man in green said he'd be right back. There was no man in green assigned to that area. We wrote it up as confusion. Stress response. The parents thanked us, hugged us. I went home and sat in the shower until the water ran cold. That was the first time it used compassion without taking anything. A test. The second violation came 3 weeks later, and it cost us a body. June 2019, Lower Burro Mesa. Hiker overdue. Thomas Klein, 56. Cardiac history. His wife had reported him missing before dark. Rule 2 again. I denied the night search. Stuck to procedure. Duty over compassion. At 1:12, my radio keyed on its own. No voice. Just breathing. I didn't answer to T114. It keyed again. A single word. My name. I answered. That's on me. The voice was wrong in a way that's hard to explain after the fact. It didn't have the panic you'd expect. It had patience. Like it knew I would eventually respond. It gave coordinates that didn't exist on our maps. A ridge that shouldn't have had a saddle. A wash that wasn't marked. I woke Aaron and one other ranger. We went out. Broke Rule 5 by splitting up to cover ground faster. Found Klein just before dawn. Dead. Heart attack. He'd been alive when the radio keyed. I know that because the imprint where he'd been sitting was still warm. When we logged the incident, the timestamps were wrong. The radio transmission didn't appear. Border Patrol never acknowledged our call for medical support. Klein's name stayed in the system. That mattered. He didn't vanish. The thing doesn't always take people. Sometimes it takes certainty. After that, the voices stopped for a while. The land settled into something like normal. Summer passed. Fall brought cooler nights and fewer visitors. We rotated staff, tried to rest. Then Laura got pregnant. That should have been a line in a different story. A good one. We'd talked about it for years. The job never felt stable enough. But the park has a way of making you think in terms of seasons, not decades. I told fewer people where I was going. I double-checked every log. I didn't write names unless I had to. I believed, stupidly, that caution would be enough. In February 2020, Border Patrol requested joint operations again. Officially, for migrant safety. Unofficially, because their own numbers weren't adding up. Agents missing time. Patrol routes shortening. Names falling out of rosters. We met at the river access near Hot Springs. Their supervisor wouldn't look me in the eye. He asked if we'd noticed anything unusual. I said yes. He said their records division had flagged 6 recoveries as administratively inconsistent. Same phrasing as before. He asked if we could share our internal notes. I said no. That's when they locked us out completely. No more shared radios. No more joint logs. When something happened near the river, we were on our own. Isolation makes patterns louder. The next disappearance was April 2020. COVID had emptied the park. Staffing was skeletal. Visitor numbers dropped, but incidents didn't. They never do. People still wander, still break rules. Sometimes because they don't know them, sometimes because they do. Sophia Ramirez, 16, local, snuck in after hours with friends, broke rule 1 and 2 in one go, fell behind near the old quarry trail. Her friends heard her call once. Then nothing. We searched at first light. Found her backpack. Phone inside. Battery full. A voice memo recording open, but empty. No waveform. No time stamp. Just a file with her name on it. I told the tech not to play it. He didn't argue. Sophia's mother came to the station every day for a week. Brought food, asked questions. I gave her the answers I was allowed to. None of them helped. On the 8th day, she asked me to write Sophia's name down. So she's official, she said. So you don't forget. I didn't. I couldn't. I told her we already had it. That was a lie. A necessary one. That night, I dreamed of the river rising without water, just elevation, like the land itself was breathing in. The thing adapts, not quickly, but inevitably. It learned we wouldn't write names easily, so it started using names that were already written. In August 2020, we got a call from dispatch about a ranger overdue from patrol. Aaron Blake. He'd gone out alone to check a sensor fault near Mule Ears. That in itself wasn't a violation. Daylight. Clear weather. He'd radioed in at noon. Nothing after. We found his truck parked correctly. Engine off. Keys on the tire. His logbook was on the seat, open to the last entry. My handwriting. I know what mine looks like. The slant. The pressure on the page. The way I cross my T's. It had written his name under personnel on duty. Correct spelling. Correct badge number. Ink not yet dry. That was the first time it crossed that line. We didn't find Aaron. Not that day. Not ever. His name stayed in the system. Too many witnesses. Too many records. He was promoted posthumously. Ceremony. Flag. His wife held herself together until the end, then collapsed into me like I could fix it. I went home and erased my old journals, burned them in the fire pit. Laura watched from the door. She didn't ask why. By then, the rules felt thin, like paper over a hole. I started hearing movement near the house at night. We lived in Terlingua, just outside the park boundary. Different jurisdiction. Same land. Footsteps where there shouldn't be any. Doors I didn't remember opening standing ajar. I didn't tell Laura. In March 2021, she went into labor early. I was on patrol near the river when the call came. Spotty reception. Her voice strained. Fear threaded through it. I broke every rule at once. I drove too fast. I answered the radio when it keyed without call sign. I spoke names out loud in the truck, telling myself it didn't matter because they were already written somewhere. When I got to the hospital, Laura was fine. Complication resolved. False alarm. Relief does dangerous things to judgment. As I left, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. No number. Laura's voice. Calm. Asking where I was. Asking me to hurry. I deleted it without listening again. That's where this turns. Not into panic. Into erosion. The thing doesn't need you to fail all at once. It just needs you tired enough to forget which rule matters most. And the one that matters most is this. You do not respond to a voice you can't place in a body. I forgot that. After Aaron disappeared, the park didn't change the way outsiders expect institutions to change. There was no shutdown. No investigation anyone could point to. No press release beyond the standard line about ongoing search efforts. His name stayed on the duty roster longer than it should have. Payroll flagged it twice. Each time, the error corrected itself without human input. That was new. We started locking physical logbooks in metal cabinets. Not for security, for containment. We rotated who wrote entries. No one was allowed to log themselves in twice. We stopped using full names over the radio unless absolutely necessary. Last names only. Badge numbers if we had to. It slowed everything down. Delay again. I should have taken leave when Laura insisted. She was 6 months pregnant. She'd started sleeping with the lights on. Said she heard someone standing outside the bedroom window, breathing like they were cold. I told her it was coyotes. That was a lie I regret more than most. The first time I heard it inside the house, I was awake. It wasn't a voice. Not yet. It was pressure. Like the air in the hallway had weight to it. Footsteps that didn't compress the floorboards. Movement without displacement. The sound of someone pausing, waiting to be acknowledged. I stayed in bed, counted breaths, waited for it to pass. It did.
The land doesn't care about jurisdictional boundaries. That's a human idea. The thing out there learned that when Border Patrol pulled back. It learned it when we did. In May 2021, a flash flood warning came through for the Chizos Mountains. Rare. Dangerous. Water moves fast in those canyons. We cleared the trails. Locked access points. Accounted for staff. Everyone came back except Rachel Kim. Rachel was dispatch, not field. She'd volunteered to help with signage that morning. Left the station to post a closure notice at the basin trailhead. Routine. Daylight. No violation on paper. But she broke Rule 1. She told me later she thought she saw someone standing off trail near the lodge. A ranger, she assumed. Green shirt. Hat pulled low. She waved. He waved back. She stepped off the pavement to tell him about the closure. That's where the rule exists. Where the land transitions from managed to indifferent. The rain started 10 minutes later. Hard. Sudden. We lost line of sight in seconds. When we found Rachel's truck, the door was open. Closure sign still in the bed. Her radio was clipped to the seat. Powered on. No transmission logged. We searched for 3 days. After the water receded, dogs lost the scent immediately. No tracks. No drag marks. No signs of fall. Her name was already in the system. Too many witnesses. Too many cameras. She didn't erase. She stayed missing. That's worse. Her parents flew in from California. Asked me to walk them through the search area. I did. Carefully. I didn't let them step off the trail. I didn't let them call her name. I answered questions with rehearsed honesty. At the end, her mother asked me if I believed Rachel was still alive. I paused too long. That was enough. The next night, the radio keyed at my house. That should be impossible. Park radios don't transmit that far. The battery in mine was out. I'd checked. Twice. Static. Then a voice I hadn't heard in months. Aaron. Not panicked. Not distressed. Just tired. Dan, it said. I need you to write this down. I didn't answer. Dan, it said again. Same cadence. Same inflection. It used my name like punctuation. Laura sat up in bed. Asked who I was talking to. I turned the radio off and removed the battery. It kept going. That was the first time speech cost it something. The voice degraded. Words stretched. The pauses got longer. Like it was struggling to maintain coherence. To hold shape. It needs rules the way fire needs oxygen. Structure. Limitation. It can't improvise forever. I realized then that it wasn't just learning our rules. It was exhausting itself against them. That knowledge didn't help me sleep. In July 2021, we lost a child. Not a visitor. One of ours. Ethan Ruiz. 11. Evan's son. Evan had transferred districts after Santa Elena. Took a desk job. Thought distance would help. Brought his family with him. They lived near Legita's. Outside the park. Safer, he thought. Ethan rode his bike down to the river overlook after dinner. Routine. Done it 100 times. Sunset was late that time of year. He had a flashlight. He knew the rules. Evan had drilled them into him. He broke Rule 2. Not intentionally. He thought he saw his dad's truck parked near the access road. Thought Evan had forgotten something and come back. He called out. The voice answered. We found the bike. Upright. Kickstand down. Flashlight still on. Beam pointing into empty space. Evan didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just stood there, staring at the beam like it would eventually land on something solid. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault. That rules fail. That this thing adapts. None of that mattered. He asked me if Ethan had said his name. I didn't answer. That was the second time the thing took someone because they believed the threat might be a real person they loved. That's the violation it waits for. After Ethan, the rules tightened. Not officially. Emotionally. People stopped bringing families to park housing. Transfers increased. Early retirements. The younger rangers lasted a year, maybe two. Enforcement fatigue became resignation. The land noticed. In October 2021, something changed in the basin. Elevation usually protects you. Cooler air. Different acoustics. The thing had trouble there before. Couldn't cross elevation shifts without being led. That stopped being true. Visitors started reporting missing time. Not hours. Minutes. They'd hike a loop and come back before they should have. Watches disagreed. GPS logs overlapped themselves. One couple swore they'd passed the same ranger 3 times on the same trail, each time closer to the trailhead, each time saying the same thing. Trails closed ahead. We closed it permanently. Border Patrol called me directly for the first time in over a year. An agent I recognized. Voice tight. He said they'd recovered a body south of the river. No face. No fingerprints. Dental didn't match anyone. The uniform did. Park Service green. The name tag was blank. That mattered more than anything else. It means the thing can't always take what it wants. When it fails to secure a name, it leaves remnants. Incomplete erasures. Physical impossibilities. We burned the uniform. Buried the remains without markers. Border Patrol filed it under unidentified. The next week, Laura asked me why the nursery door kept opening on its own. I checked the hinges. Solid. No drafts. The handle was at child height. Not something an adult would bump accidentally. That night, I heard movement again. Not in the hallway. In the nursery. I stood in the doorway and waited. The crib was empty. Laura hadn't put the baby in there yet. Still weeks to go. The mobile was spinning slowly. No motor. No airflow. I didn't enter. That restraint saved me. I started sleeping at the station more often. Told Laura it was staffing shortages. She didn't argue. She just looked relieved when I left. In December 2021, we had our first confirmed containment failure. A bus tour group ignored a closure sign near Santa Elena. Climbed over a barrier to take photos. Tour guide broke Rule 1 by stepping off trail to help an older woman. 4 people vanished in under 3 minutes. No bodies. No belongings. Just absence. Cameras recorded them walking out of frame and never re-entering. That many witnesses should have anchored them. Names, faces, tickets, records. It didn't matter. The thing had learned scale. It doesn't need individuals if it can work through systems. After that, the superintendent called an emergency meeting. Closed door. Phones surrendered. He didn't use the word entity. He said pattern. He said liability. He said containment posture. That was the first time anyone above my level acknowledged what we were doing. He ordered us to remove certain trail signs, to stop publishing detailed maps, to limit after-hours access more aggressively. We all knew it wouldn't be enough. Rules delay. They don't stop. Laura gave birth in January 2022. A girl. Hannah. I didn't write her name down anywhere I didn't have to. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. No voices. No movement. The land went still in a way that felt intentional. Like a held breath. Then the radio keyed at 2:07. Static. Then crying. An infant. Not Hannah's. Too distant. Too distorted. I turned the radio off. It keyed again. Louder. Laura stirred. Asked if I heard that. I said no. That was another lie. The thing had learned a new pressure point. It didn't need names if it could force a response. It didn't need to cross elevation if it could make you bring it inside. I started keeping a written list of rules in my pocket. Not the official ones. The real ones. Updated. Crossed out. Rewritten. The last line just said, Silence is survival. I didn't know yet how hard that would be to follow. By early 2022, silence stopped being neutral. It became a provocation. We noticed it first in the way incidents clustered. Not geographically, temporally. Long stretches of nothing, followed by compressed failures. 3 reports in an hour. 2 calls overlapping. Radios keying out of sequence. It was as if the land was saving effort, then spending it all at once. We adjusted again. Staggered patrols. Reduced radio chatter to essentials. No call signs unless absolutely required. We stopped answering anything that didn't come through dispatch cleanly. That's when it started using delay against us. In March, a hiker collapsed near Emery Peak. Legitimate. Medical emergency. Heart rate irregular. We had visual confirmation. Names spoken. Logged. Everything done correctly. Extraction took longer than it should have. The trail elongated. Switchbacks repeated. Our GPS track doubled back on itself without us turning. Every time we thought we were nearing the helipad zone, the elevation dipped instead of rose. The patient stayed conscious the whole time. Too calm. Kept apologizing. Kept saying he didn't want to be a problem. That language matters. At one point, he asked me to tell his wife he loved her. I said no. That refusal wasn't cruelty. It was containment. Speaking names under stress creates openings. That's something we learned the hard way. He died 5 minutes later. Natural causes. Documented. No disappearance. But when we reviewed the body cam footage later, there was a gap. 37 seconds missing between his last coherent sentence and the flat line. No one remembered those seconds. That was new. Memory erosion became another vector. Not removal. Smoothing. Details flattening until they couldn't anchor events properly. You can't contain what you can't remember clearly. I started keeping redundant notes. Physical. Analog. Stored off-site. Laura didn't like that. Said it made the house feel like a bunker. She wasn't wrong. The first time the thing directly interfered with Hannah was in April. She was asleep. Laura was in the shower. I was at the kitchen table, writing. The baby monitor hissed. Then quieted. Then hissed again. I heard movement in the nursery. Not sound. Pressure again. A change in the way the air Saturday. I stood up and stopped. That pause mattered. I remembered the limitation. It needs permission. Not verbal. Behavioral. It cannot cross thresholds unless invited by action. Stepping forward. Answering. Touching. I stayed where I was. The movement retreated. The monitor clicked back on. Hannah kept sleeping. I didn't tell Laura. At work, things degraded faster. In May, 2 interns quit mid-shift. Walked out of the basin station and didn't come back. Left their packs. Their badges. Their radios. Drove off without saying goodbye. They emailed later from El Paso. Said they couldn't explain it. Said the park felt crowded even when empty. Said they kept feeling like someone was waiting for them to notice. We didn't try to talk them out of it. Attrition is containment. Then came June 12th. That date matters. A bus broke down near Ross Maxwell Scenic Drive. Full of tourists. Elderly group. Heat advisory in effect. No cell service. The driver flagged down a ranger patrol. Aaron's old truck. That shouldn't have been possible. His vehicle had been impounded. Keys secured. I knew because I'd signed the inventory myself. The ranger driving it didn't show his face. He stayed seated. Window down just enough to speak. Told the driver to wait. Said help was coming. Asked for the passenger manifest. That was the mistake. The driver handed it over. Names. Ages. Numbers. All in one place. When our actual patrol arrived 15 minutes later, the bus was empty. Doors open. Engine running. Air conditioning blasting into nothing. No footprints. No signs of struggle. Just a clipboard on the driver's seat. Manifest gone. That was the first mass erasure inside park boundaries. We closed the road indefinitely. Press blamed heat exposure. Border Patrol sealed the area. Records vanished into interagency review. 6 recoveries had locked the records before. This locked the conversation. Laura wanted us to leave after that. Said no job was worth raising a child in a place like this. She wasn't wrong. But leaving doesn't undo exposure. It just spreads it. I requested a transfer anyway. Paperwork stalled. HR lost the forms twice. When they finally processed it, the destination field was blank. That's when I understood. It wasn't trying to keep me here. It was expanding. Reports came in from other parks. Whispered. Unofficial. A ranger at Organ Pipe hearing his own voice over the radio. A trail worker in Joshua Tree disappearing after writing a name in chalk on a boulder. A Border Patrol agent near the Gila Bend sector found without a face, name tag intact. Different regions. Same patterns. Different names. Older than us. Known before. We weren't unique. We were just tired. In August, Evan Ruiz shot himself. No note. No warning. His wife said he'd been quiet. Not depressed. Focused. Like he'd finally decided something. I attended the funeral in uniform. Stood next to his family. His daughter asked me if her brother was still lost or if he'd finished disappearing. I had no answer. That night, the radio keyed with laughter. Not mocking. Not cruel. Relieved. I smashed it with a hammer. That didn't help. The superintendent resigned in September. Cited health reasons. His replacement never took office. The position remained interim indefinitely. Systemic failure doesn't announce itself. It just stops filling gaps. We were down to skeleton crews. Enforcement fatigue turned into apathy. Rangers stopped correcting visitors unless absolutely necessary. Trails stayed closed longer. Signage weathered away. The thing didn't need us as much anymore. In October, Laura woke me up at 3:18. She said Hannah was talking. Babies don't talk. I went to the nursery doorway and stopped. The crib was empty. The window was open. Laura screamed behind me. I didn't move. That restraint cost me something I don't know how to name. Hannah was in the living room, sitting on the rug. Awake. Calm. Too calm. Looking at the front door. She hadn't crawled yet. Not properly. Certainly not that far. The door handle turned. I closed my eyes and said nothing. The handle stopped. Laura sobbed into my back. Asked me to do something. I didn't. Eventually, the pressure lifted. The door stayed closed. Hannah blinked and started crying like a normal infant. That was the closest it came. That was the price of silence. After that, I stopped pretending this was just a job. I moved my family out of Tolingua. Rented a place in Alpine. Higher elevation. Different acoustics. It bought us time. That's all elevation ever does. I stayed. Someone had to. In December 2022, Border Patrol quietly reopened joint communications. No explanation. No apology. Their radios sounded older. Analog. Less capable. Less vulnerable. An agent told me off record that they'd started burning manifests too. Stopped using digital rosters near certain sectors. That their losses had slowed when they did. Delay again. The thing reacted. Voices became rarer. When they did appear, they were degraded. Fragmented. Names mispronounced. Details wrong. Speech costs it now. So it uses pressure. Absence. Consequence chains. A visitor ignores a closure sign. Another visitor follows because they don't want to seem rude. Someone steps off trail to help. A name gets written. A report filed. A log saved. And something else gets space. I'm tired in a way sleep doesn't touch. I know how this ends, even if I don't know when. The rules aren't wrong. They're just not enough anymore. They assume a world where institutions hold. That world is thinning. And the thing out here knows it. By 2023, containment stopped being proactive. It became archival. We weren't preventing incidents anymore. We were documenting what slipped through, deciding what could be acknowledged, and quietly burying the rest. The rules were still spoken, but less often. New rangers memorized them like folklore. Old ones carried them like guilt. The land didn't surge. It normalized. That was worse. When horror becomes routine, people stop resisting it. They stop thinking of silence as active. They stop recognizing pressure as a warning sign. They start believing again that what they're hearing must be human, because the alternative is too exhausting to hold in your head. That's when the thing thrives. The first indication that we were losing ground came from an unexpected place: paperwork. In February, I reviewed a weekly incident summary and noticed a name I didn't recognize listed under assisting personnel. No badge number. No hire date. Just a name. Andrew Calder. My name. Not me. The spelling was correct, but the middle initial was wrong. Subtle. The kind of error that slips past tired eyes. I flagged it. IT said the entry had propagated across 3 systems and then locked itself. No one could trace the original input. No one remembered entering it. That meant permission had been granted somewhere. I stopped signing documents with my full name. Initials only. It slowed things down. Caused confusion. Bought time. Laura called me that night and asked if I was sure we were safe in Alpine. She said Hannah had started pointing at corners of rooms and smiling like she recognized someone. Children don't understand rules. They understand presence. I told Laura to keep the doors closed. To never answer Hannah if she called from another room. To never write her name on anything decorative. No plaques. No baby books. No chalk drawings. I hated myself for saying it. In March, we had another mass incident. Not dramatic. No buses. No cameras. A volunteer trail crew went missing near Dog Canyon. 7 people. Experienced. Radios. GPS. All accounted for at the trailhead. None returned. When we reached the site, their tools were stacked neatly. Packs aligned. Water bottles full. They hadn't been taken mid-task. They'd been dismissed. Like their presence was no longer required. That's when I realized the thing didn't just erase people. It redistributed function. It didn't need bodies if it could hollow out roles. Rangers stopped showing initiative. Dispatch missed calls. Supervisors deferred decisions upward that never came back down. The institution itself began behaving like something waiting to be told what to do. Permission again. In April, Laura told me she wanted to change Hannah's name. Not legally. Just, at home. A nickname. Something different. She said she felt like the name was too loud. That broke something in me. Names matter. They anchor. They define boundaries. Changing one voluntarily creates a gap. I told her no. She cried for the first time in months. Not loudly. Quietly. Like she was trying not to be overheard. That night, I heard Hannah laughing through the phone. I was at the station. Laura wasn't on the line. I didn't answer. The call stopped on its own. I drove to Alpine anyway. Found Laura asleep on the couch. Hannah in her crib. No signs of disturbance. On the fridge was a piece of paper I didn't recognize. Crayon. Child's handwriting. A name. Not Hannah's. Crossed out. Laura said she didn't remember putting it there. I burned it in the sink. By June, enforcement fatigue turned into abdication. Trails stayed closed without explanation. Visitor centers reduced hours. Rangers avoided solo patrols entirely. Border Patrol stopped reporting their own missing unless pressed. Their internal memos stopped using names altogether. Just numbers. Unit 14 Delta unaccounted. It slowed losses. But something else accelerated. The thing stopped using voices almost entirely. Speech was too expensive now. Instead, it used implication. Doors left open that shouldn't be. Vehicles parked where someone would have had to drive them. Logs completed in handwriting that was close enough to pass. It learned imitation without mimicry. The limitation still held. It couldn't cross thresholds without permission. But permission doesn't have to be conscious, IT can be procedural. In July, I authorized a temporary reopening of a short trail loop near the basin. Low risk. Good visibility. Heavy visitor pressure to allow access. That authorization was the mistake. I didn't go out there myself. I delegated. Trusted the system. A family entered the loop at 10:12 a.m. Parents. 2 kids. Day pack. Water. Hats. All the right behaviors. At 10:26, the trail counter registered their exit. At 10:41, another family entered. At 10:43, the first family's car unlocked itself. At 11 o'clock, their names were logged in dispatch as cleared. No one remembered doing it. When the parents didn't return calls that evening, we initiated a search. Found the kids' hats placed side by side near the trail marker. No other signs. The trail counter showed no anomalies. The system said they were gone. That's when the superintendent's office, what was left of it, issued a quiet directive. We were to stop reopening trails once closed. Permanent closures. No explanation. The park began to shrink. That's how it spreads. Not by moving outward. By making places unusable. Laura gave me an ultimatum in September. Either I transferred out of state immediately, or she would leave with Hannah and not come back. I didn't argue. I submitted the paperwork again. Marked multiple destinations. Any elevation change. Any different system. 2 weeks later, HR called. They said my transfer had already been processed. I was confused. I hadn't received confirmation. They told me I declined it. The signature on the form was mine. Perfect match. Permission. I drove to Alpine that night knowing something was wrong. Laura and Hannah were gone. The house was empty. No signs of struggle. No packing chaos. Just absence. On the kitchen table was a note. Not in Laura's handwriting. Just coordinates. Inside the park. Near Santa Elena. The river. The oldest boundary. I stood there for a long time before understanding the choice. The thing couldn't take them directly. But it could reposition them. Offer me a path. If I went, I would be leading it. If I didn't, I would be abandoning them. Rules versus loved ones. The rule is clear. You do not go to the river at night. I went anyway. That was the final violation. I crossed the park boundary after midnight. No lights. No siren. No radio. I left my badge in the glove compartment. Took my notebook and nothing else. If this was going to end, it needed to end without credentials. Without symbols. Without anything that could be repurposed as permission. The road to Santa Elena was empty in the way deserts get when something else has decided to occupy the space. No insects. No wind. The river didn't reflect moonlight. It absorbed it. I parked where we used to stage joint ops with Border Patrol. The concrete barrier was still there. So was the scorch mark from the bus incident. I stepped out and immediately felt the pressure shift. Like the land had been waiting for the correct variable. Me. I didn't call out. That restraint mattered longer than anything else I did that night. The coordinates from the note led down the access path toward the river bend. The old rule markers were still there, half buried, weathered. No night crossing. No after-dark activity. The words meant nothing to the land, but they meant something to me. I followed them anyway. Halfway down, I saw footprints. Adult. Booted. One set. Laura's shoes are smaller. That detail nearly broke me. I stopped moving. Counted breaths. Waited for the pressure to intensify. It didn't. It just sat there, patient. That's how it works when it knows you've already committed. I reached the riverbank at 1:38. Laura was standing on the south side. That should have been impossible. Border Patrol sensors would have flagged a crossing. The current was low but fast. She didn't look wet. She didn't look cold. She looked tired. "Hannah's with me," she said. The voice was right. That was the cruelest part. It didn't rush the sentence. Didn't overemphasize. Didn't distort cadence. It had learned restraint. I didn't answer. "You can see her," Laura said. "She's right here." She gestured behind her. Nothing was there. My body leaned forward without permission from my mind. I stopped it. That pause cost me everything and saved something I don't know how to name. "Come back," she said. "You don't have to cross. Just write it down. So it's official. So we're safe." That was the mechanism. Permission by procedure. The river is the oldest boundary we have here. Older than fences. Older than law. It knows that. It respects that. It can't cross it alone. It needs to be brought. And it needs a record. I took out my notebook. My hands were steady. That scared me. I realized then that this wasn't a rescue scenario. It never had been. It was a containment negotiation, and I was the only one left who understood the terms. I wrote my own name. Slowly. Carefully. Correct spelling. Correct middle initial. That was the last thing it expected. The pressure spiked. The air thickened. The river surged without rising. The land reacted the way it always does when something breaks a pattern it relies on. Laura's face flickered. Not melted. Not monstrous. Just misaligned. Like the features were being referenced from memory instead of observed directly. "You don't get to do that," it said. That was the first time it spoke in anger. "Names grant permission," I said. "Witnesses grant permission. Systems grant permission." I closed the notebook. "You don't have me." It reached then. Not physically. It reached through consequence. My radio keyed up in the truck behind me. Dispatch lights flickered on the horizon. Somewhere, someone logged an incident they didn't understand. I felt the pull. This is the part you won't like. I stepped back. I did not cross. I did not call her name. I did not answer when she screamed. That scream followed me for the rest of the night. It followed me into sleep. It followed me into rooms that were supposed to be safe. By morning, Laura and Hannah were gone. Not missing. Gone.no records. No alerts. No amber system. No hospital intake. No border patrol acknowledgement. I filed the report myself. Wrote it in a way that would never be escalated. Domestic departure. Unknown destination. No signs of foul play. I was still a ranger then. That status didn't last. 2 weeks later, my badge access failed. Payroll stopped. My name remained, but my function didn't. That's how it works when systems hollow out instead of erase. I stayed anyway. Someone had to remember the rules. The thing out here didn't die. It didn't retreat. It didn't need to. It learned. It learned that we will choose silence over screams if we believe it protects someone else. It learned that we will sacrifice our moral identity to preserve boundaries. It learned that institutions decay faster than fear. And it learned that names still matter. Just not always the way we think. If you're hearing this, it means the containment posture has already failed somewhere else. Maybe not here. Maybe where you are. So listen carefully. If you enter a wilderness area and the rules don't make sense, follow them anyway. If you hear a voice after dark, don't answer unless you can see the body attached to it. If someone asks you to write their name down before you can confirm they're real, don't. If a system clears someone faster than it should, question it. And if you ever find yourself standing at a boundary with someone you love on the other side, asking you to just take one more step, remember this. The rules don't exist to keep you safe. They exist to keep something else contained. And every time you break one, even for the right reason, it learns how to live a little closer to you.